Welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large at Mississippi Today. Of course, you can catch all of our great coverage at mississippi.today.org, or if you'd like to make a donation, that's always free, and it's free because of sponsors and donors like you. Thank you so much. Got a great guest today. Somebody I actually used to work with for a very short amount of time, but a person I've really grown to respect, and particularly after reading his brand new book. We've got David Magee with us. He's the director of Institute Advancement. I'm going to read the bio here in the book at the University of Mississippi. It's a role he started after helping create the launch of the William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education at the university, named after his late son, William, who we will hear about in just a second. The Magee Center focuses on substance misuse education and support within the university, and an effort is to grow with the addition of the university's next standalone national institute, the Magee Institute for Student Wellbeing. David, thank you. Everybody, if you're a parent, you need to read this. If you're not a parent, you need to read this. And when you do read it, be prepared to sit down and not put it down for the duration of the book. It is an incredibly powerful read. Congratulations on the book, and congratulations for, I guess, kind of being resilient and being able to get through all the stuff that you went through in the book as well.
Marshall, it's so great to be with you. And, you didn't bring me here to brag on you, but I've always been so impressed by your human sense and sensibility of how you recognize people go through things. And I like when you send those pictures of those deer you see in the morning on your therapy walks. And I have to tell you, that makes a difference many times in my life. Just that little stroke of a touch point of you acknowledging that and connecting with others. And so really, I wrote Dear William, this memoir, for the same exact reason. I think that, testimony has been around for a very long time. And one of the more powerful ways we humans can connect to one another, can relate to one another, just as you do. And so I wrote Dear William, this pretty revealing memoir where a lot of secrets are revealed, for that exact reason, because I felt like I'm a little embarrassed to reveal all of this, but at the same time, I'm not sure what's even the point. If I write this airbrushed memoir, and it's like, oh, we opened the center at Ole Miss, and I had a little struggle, or what if I wrote a whole book about we lost a son, William, as we did, to an accidental drug overdose. But what if I just focused on his struggles, but I didn't also take some responsibility and some connectivity?
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important there about the secrets, because I think, and not to go total Dr. Phil on you, but I mean, with childhood trauma, if you literally, you can't fight, you can't flight, because you can't run away from home and you can't fight back against the authority. So a lot of times what that does is create self-esteem issues. It causes that toxic shame that you hear Brene Brown talking about all the time. But, you as a kid, you literally had this whole world of secrets, because here you were adopted. So that was a secret. Your dad was a closet homosexual, so that was a secret. So you were literally in a world of secrets. I think the ultimate metaphor in the book is you had a dog named Happy that lived in the basement and was covered with fleas. I mean,
and it's very sad for the dog that Happy lived in the basement and was covered with fleas, but it is really funny. I mean, we got this dog Happy, and this Happy is living this miserable existence. But in that era, my patchwork family, they wanted to create in the 60s and 70s this picturesque Americana, family, and we were taking car vacations to Dog Patch, and we had a dachshund named Happy in the basement. But yet, Marshall, I reveal in the fourth grade where, I didn't understand what depression was, but you may remember a part of the book when I just kind of brushed a line in where I'm in the fourth grade. And I remember hearing somewhere lead is poison. So I have a pencil and I'm trying to like jab it into my arm. And I'm thinking in the fourth grade, sadly, this could just do it right here. Get me out of this. I'm done. And I remember going to the nurse and they're like shocked and like, what has happened here? And I remember just crying, thinking, I don't know what happened. I just kind of need relief.
Yeah. Yeah. Your main job at that point was to be a kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't to take on all the burdens of your family, with your sister and her issues and her mom.
That's right.
Her mom being codependent and taking care of that. So you had all this stuff that you literally were dealing with. And, I remember one time I was telling some of my woes to my therapist, and he looked at me and he said, well, congratulations, you're not an alcoholic, but you should be. And I was just like, what? It's like, that was the craziest thing ever.
Oh, well, I made it into that category.
Yeah,
so
I got to say, it is not really a surprise that you discovered alcohol anyway to put out those flames at an early age.
I know. I remember when I was 14, there's this chapter in the book early on, and my parents didn't drink. I mean, I never saw alcohol in the house, and as you know, I'm this adopted child, and my parents didn't drink, they didn't curse. I just never, it was as sanitized a situation, except it wasn't. It was exceptionally toxic. But I'm 14. I didn't know anything about alcohol, but I'm 14. What I really know about, or I don't know, what I'm really wanting to know about is girls.
Right.
And these girls invite me on a car ride. And I'm like, wow, this is a dream. Let's go. I didn't know where we were headed. It turns out they're headed to the Marshall County line near Holly Springs, where you can buy cold beer. And I'm in like junior high, which is middle school today. They called it junior high then. And there's some older girls driving, and I'm panicking like they're buying beer, So they hand me one, and I don't know what to do with it. And I take a swallow, and it's awful, and I kind of barf in my mouth. But it's not because I wanted to drink. It's because I wanted girls and I wanted attention. I coveted attention and affirmation. So I choked this beer down, and it was awful. But yet, by the time it hit the bottom of the barrel, I'm thinking, I kind of like this drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, here you were adopted, so you had no idea anything about your DNA, or like for me, I've got two sisters, not trying to add one to the mix, but whenever I'm struggling a little bit, it's always kind of helpful to have my sisters around, because it's almost like an owner's manual, because they came along before me, and you kind of understand, because we're different, but we're the same. And so here you were trying to figure this thing, and suddenly alcohol made you, and I think at one point, even the other kid said, yeah, he's really a great guy when he's drinking, kind of thing.
Oh, I won. Yeah. I was voted friendliest at Oxford High School in the 10th grade, which, it's a big public school, and that should be an honor, except I'm in 10th grade, and someone wrote on the ballot box, only when he's drinking.
Wow.
And I saw that, and it crushed me. Yeah. And actually, that was probably the worst week of my life. So then the vote comes out, and I'm fully responsible for that. And what I'm about to say, I'm also, not casting blame, but so then I win, and they invite the parents and everything, and my parents don't come. And I'm not blaming them. I've long ago made peace with this, but I'm telling you from my child's perspective at the time. So I remember seeing that, like, oh, wow, only when he's drunk. Or I'm like, I think maybe that's true. What's going on with it? And then I go to the awards ceremony, and I don't have anybody there. And I have to say that I'm responsible for myself, but at that time I didn't understand that. And I took a deep, deep dive. It didn't go well. My life that year just essentially, disintegrated, where I kept breathing, but there wasn't a whole lot else going on.
Yeah. I mean, you said you lived in a toxic situation in your house. You were ready to get out of there. And by the time
Yes,
you went to school, it's not like you could run away and go to a different school because your
I
dad
know.
was, he was the
He
assistant
was
dean of
my
liberal arts.
dean at Ole
Yeah.
Miss.
So you were getting a
Oh,
free education. So guess what? You're going to 13th grade.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, Marshall. I ran into it's somebody we both know well, and who it is doesn't matter. But when this book came out, I mean, just last week, and a friend of ours read Dear William, and I don't know if they knew what to expect, really. I think they were thinking probably I had written a beautiful boy type memoir, except my son dies, and it's just sad all the way through. So they picked it up and they're reading it, and they said their first reaction quickly is, wow, could this be true? I mean, this seems so real. I wonder, is he taking any literary license? And then they realize no, because they get a little bit deeper where I'm really revealing about my father, who was my dean and my trusted person, as he was my adopted father, and he was my dean who had to sign everything at the University of Mississippi. And this person said when they got deeper in it and they're reading details about, maybe his relationship with some students, and they called me and they said, I need to talk to you. And it's just a couple of days ago. And they said, I did not have a relationship with your father because I'm heterosexual, but he did me an academic favor once. He helped me drop a bunch of classes after it was too late. And then all of a sudden he's coming around with a camera and trying to get me to pose privately for pictures. And he was grooming me. Yeah. It wasn't, I was straight, so that wasn't a thing, but it was exceptionally uncomfortable. And I just need you to know that. And they said, when I got to that point, I realized this seems like a pretty crazy story you're telling, except everything you wrote, I knew to be true, word for word for word. I said, well, I don't think, if anything, there's a whole lot more truth that I probably didn't include, right? I mean, it's a memoir. I guess people do take literary license in memoirs, down to the quotes of how I quote people. That book is the only thing I did was change some names and characteristics to protect some people that didn't ask to be, but I just did. So some names are changed. Otherwise, down to even quotes, the story is just the gospel, and that's the way it happened. And if anything, probably I left some out.
I mean, I would be disappointed if you did take literary license, because I don't think you need to. Obviously,
I
what happened in your life was, you understand till you get to the point, I think page 199, when your daughter looks at you, and I'm not to jump that far ahead, but she looks at, how did we get so broken? Which is one of the most powerful sentences in the whole book. When your child looks at you and, you have literally gone through the first of three tragedies that you're going to be going through, several tragedies you're going to go through. But it was just like, in that question, and by the time you get to page 199, you understand why.
Yeah, I know. Oh, Marshall, I'll never forget that. I mean, we're sitting there in the hospital with one of my sons who didn't die, but he nearly died, and he's on life support. And I'm counting the days to pull the plug. I'm telling everybody, I can't watch this. I'm not going to have a brain dead child. They said he's probably brain dead. I'm counting the days to pull the plug, and we're so broken. I was maybe 2 years into the journey of back up on my feet. So I was still, shaky-ish ground. And my daughter's like, Dad. Yes, dear. How did we get so broken? And I mean, it was like this silence just ripped across the entire globe. And I'm just in this vacuum of, how did we get so broken? I mean, we were the family sitting together at church that people would write notes and hand over and go, you have the most precious family, And how did we get there? So that's what this book is about, which, because I'm so thankful for you reading it and, helping tell this story, because I wrote it and I revealed all that not for my own benefit. Revealing these secrets cannot possibly help me personally. It cannot possibly help me professionally. Personally, on the self-therapy end, yes.
Yeah.
But professionally, there's just no way, right? And I just wrote it because we suffered so much that I find that son we lost. People say to me, well, you can never bring him back. And I go, no. However, I cannot tell you the joy from how many students I've been able to work with and help, and how many people. I mean, just before we did this morning, I had a message from someone who said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. You don't know me. I kind of relapsed recently. I'm going to go back into treatment because I just finished your book. Wow. And that's not patting me on the back. No. That's saying that's why I wrote it. That's the long story of the punchline. That is why I revealed these secrets and wrote this book.
No, I think number one, I mean, there is a superstar in this book, and that is your wife, Kim. Yeah. Okay. Yes. You met her at a Sigma Nu party on campus. She was wearing the Bugs Bunny bathing suit, which, which is
who could miss that? A one piece with Bugs Bunny.
Everybody else was wearing their two pieces. She's pulling off the Looney Tunes, and which was a huge power move on her part. But she was also not going to give in to you right away. No. And you should have known from that moment there's something special here. And David, I got to give you a lot of credit. Anybody that goes out with their, maybe, this person you're dating could be your father-in-law with guns.
Yes,
that was very damn brave of you. I just want to let you know that, because two went out, one could have come back very easily. But
there is no doubt about it. But I was nobody's fool. Yeah. I knew. I've got a friend from Jackson who was there at that moment when I met her, and I looked at him and he smiled at me, and I'm like, and he still remembers that. There was just this look that came across my face. And she was not into me for a couple of years. And, she is the hero of this story, and she didn't want to be, and she didn't ask to be. She did it out of desperation to keep her family together, and to give me as her husband a second chance. I mean, we got divorced. Yeah. And
you cheated.
Right.
I mean,
rightly so.
Yeah.
Right. But she, Marshall, oddly enough, as difficult as that book is, and there's one particular grippingly difficult chapter where I'm off at Christmas with another woman.
Yeah.
And on the West Coast, almost in Phoenix. And I mean, for her to encourage me to go so deep in this book with so much pain like that, probably 5 times during the writing process, which is why she's the hero of Dear William, she would say, David, go deeper. Wow. David, you need to go deeper. And I'm sorry, I said, well, you're not going to be able to read it until I'm finished, because I can't bear to show it to you. I will take your advice, but I'm just going to have to let you read it once it's headed to publication. And she agreed to that.
That's incredible. I've always admired your career. I mean, and not only what you've achieved. I mean, you and I are about the same age. You're a couple years older, but we've kind of followed along a similar track. But you've been more of an entrepreneur. You've been able to do some really cool things. You've written some really successful books. You had, but the thing is, and I recognize this too, when the newspaper business collapsed, and here I am, editorial cartoonist, there's like 10 of us left in the world, on that, I realized how much I was trying to fill this hole in my soul with what I did on a professional basis. And that's exactly what you were doing, and, between the alcohol and the professional stuff. And that
chasing it.
Yeah. And, that, at the end of the day, does have an effect on your family, and you don't realize it until it's almost too late.
Marshall, wow, you are so right. It's interesting. Let me say something about you that's really interesting that also connects to me. You and I like that moment where I was at the Clarion Ledger, I was still trying to get back up on my feet, and you were going through this. I mean, here you're, Pulitzer finalist, this just superstar across America. And it had nothing to do with you. It's that the newspaper business is crumbling. You didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make sense of that. But so here's what's interesting. You and I, like if we connect at the right time, well, we are now, like, we have a lot in common.
Right.
So, but our time we didn't get as much time together for where we both were at that moment. Okay. So I go on, and then my son William dies. Yeah. And I kind of start my career over again, and I go show up in Birmingham, Alabama, at Advance, which had just crashed the Birmingham News, the Huntsville Times, the Mobile Press Register, and it was this stunning implosion that kind of fit with what was happening at the Clarion Ledger. And I had become a digital person. So it's poetic because, and this connects back to you in a minute, because it's poetic because I'm rebuilding my own life, and I'm being asked to. I had 140 journalists that they put under me, and they were all the Birmingham News and all these newspaper people. And suddenly I got a pretty lofty position, and they're charging me with converting this into a digital operation. So here's where it circles back to you. Someone that reminds me so much of you. I then did have a time where we were both at the spot where suddenly we had all of this time together. And he reminds me so much of you, and he became one of my very best friends in the world, and it's John Archibald. Mm-hmm. Do you know John?
Yeah, I know of him, yeah.
Yeah, so John was going through exactly what you're talking about facing at the Clarion Ledger, because he had been, he was just in the center of that universe. And then they crashed the Birmingham News down, and he's like, this has probably ended my career. I don't know where I'm going to go. So we kind of went in the trenches together, and he did just like you've done here. He just adapted and became, like you are now, a digital storyteller, what you're able to do with Mississippi Today. And you know what's funny? Two things. Number one, he won the Pulitzer Prize, and he thought his whole life and career was over as a journalist. And it just comes to fit with the story of Dear William and what you're saying about media. And John and I laugh and talk about this all the time. He's truly become one of my closest friends in the world. And it's about reinvention every day, though. And it's about perspective. And it's like what you have done, and it's like what John has done. And it's what I realized I had to do. Yeah. The more I sat there and was bitter over what was changing that I couldn't control, was just not healthy. The more I realized I am a storyteller, the same that you have done, the same that John has done. Right. And you know what? We're just going to tell stories.
Right. I was just talking with Valerie Geller, who is a radio consultant, on that. I said, I used to consider myself a cartoonist. Now I do radio, television. I do a lot of different things. I'm a storyteller, and that's
you are a storyteller.
Right.
And a good one, let me add.
Yeah. What's that?
And a good one, let me add.
Thank you. By the way, folks, buy Dear William, just to let you know. There you go. Just it is really a great book. And like I said, one of the things that kind of cracked me up is, of course, you live in Oxford, and Oxford is like LA is to actors. You can basically look on every corner, and there's a writer in Oxford, and there's some darn
really
good ones.
Talented.
Yeah, really talented. I mean, like I said, when you've got Tom Franklin on here and Beth Ann Finley are your friends and helping you with the book and everything else. And of course, you've got Square Books, which is arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, and of course, throw Lemuria a bone too, but the greatest independent bookstore in the country. So that says a lot too. But, it's so funny that you were so hungry for that validation early on. It just showed you were broken at that point. And you actually, first book you wanted to write was a memoir, and you realized you didn't have enough life.
Yes.
And one of the last things William told you was to write the book.
Yeah.
That was so. And by the way, David, I am so glad that you got that car ride with him. You got that time with him.
No. We could make a whole movie. I've got people looking at movie rights, and you know how that deal goes. You've had friends do it. Like,
Yeah.
this may never come to pass, but I told one of them who was looking at it, I'm like, you could just take that car ride and make a whole movie about that car ride of us going across the country, and it changed my life. I'm thinking I'm going to talk to him, and I'm afraid he's struggling as a college student. So I've got it all mapped out, and we could touch in the car, and I'm just lecturing him as a father would do. And it's all bouncing right back at me. And by the time I get to California, it's changed my life. And, one thing on the writers thing I'll say, Marshall, is when I was, it is humbling to be a writer in Oxford with so many just powerhouses. I mean, Kiese Lehman lives right next to me and is a friend, maybe the godfather of the contemporary memoir in the whole world. Amy Hukamatadl, Beth Ann, Tom, I don't even know where to go, but so when I was growing up, you note in the book that you'll remember in the book where I spent a lot of time at Dean Faulkner Wells' house, and I kind of felt a yearn to tell stories in my heart. So I go home and I tell my adopted parents, and I'm not, bless them, they're dead and gone. I'm not picking on them, but this is just how it went. I don't blame them for the reaction, but I said, I want to write books one day.
Yeah.
And they were so concerned because I had terrible grades in English. They were so concerned. And in fact, they suggested a career in sales and said there's a trade school at the high school, like you can get and I'm like, really? I'm not very good with a saw. And, we'll know at the end of this week, and whether it happens, who knows, but we do know this first week we at least had enough sales to make some bestseller list somewhere. It's up to the gods bigger than me of whether it actually gets picked up and makes one and does or doesn't. But the sales are in because they end every Saturday. And we know that we had enough sales in Dear William in this first week to really make a national ripple. And it is humbling as an adult to sit here and you go, that was 4 decades ago when I was a child, and I said, I'm going to write this book. I want to write a book one day that matters. And, to 4 decades later, it's not patting me on the back. It's sharing that to say to any human, you literally, it takes hard work, and it takes resilience, and it takes perseverance. And you can't have a picture of exactly what it needs to look like, but you actually can achieve on some level everything that you want to.
So Dave Grohl was trying to impress his girlfriend at the time in middle school, I think it was junior high. And he literally had a dream that he was performing in a rock concert, and she was right in the front row of it. And then they broke up, of course, as what happens. It happened to you with Ashley, but they broke up. And then flash forward, 30 years in the future, the Foo Fighters are playing in DC. He steps out on stage. It's the same exact scenario, and she's right there on the front row as an adult. You got to have the dream. And that's the thing. The danger is if you had believed your parents at that point,
right.
That's because I had a teacher
that actually is the danger. And I kind of did. I can tell you, I went on through that year, and I think I flunked English. I'm serious. I didn't even say this in the book. I had to go retake it in summer school, and I'm not blaming them for that. I'm responsible for me, but I thought I was a writer, and the response was, no, you're not.
Yeah. I think, David, seriously, there is so much of a balance between personal responsibility and the wiring that you're wired with as a child, that you literally go unconscious. You unconsciously go through this the rest of your life on this wiring that's happened to you when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, until something happens like William's death that wakes you up enough to realize, I got to make some changes in my life.
Yes.
And, you're literally the grown-up in the situation because you're the dad, and you got to put the oxygen mask on your face because you're looking around and seeing your family struggling. That like I said, the first books you wrote because you wanted to make some money, or you wanted,
a paycheck. Oh, it was a paycheck.
Yeah.
Paycheck and ego.
This right here is like the column that you wrote that went super viral. It's helping people. It's helping parents like me. It's helping other people, because there's a lot of parents out there that are just fat, dumb, and happy. They don't understand that what their kids are facing now are way harder than what you and I faced when we were in school in the 80s.
You know, and it's interesting on Dear William, I really, Marshall, I'm going to call that my first book. This is my first book. The others, it was kind of this apprenticeship, and that was David 1.0. But I didn't really become a man until I was 45 years old. And I think that Dear William is really David 2.0, who became a man. That's his first book. And the other was Practice and Failure and Learning. And, you know, I had a bestseller in India, France, but they still weren't that good. I'm just going to be honest. They were not very good. And they were probably more fulfilling of what my parents were trying to send me to trade school. Like I probably should have gone at that point. But I think that once I became a man and had crawled across the floor, I had more empathy. I had more understanding of others, myself, and therefore I had some structural writing ability, but it pulled the accordion and added depth of human appreciation. And that human appreciation allowed me to take writing to a different level. And also I had an understanding of family. So you said a minute ago about how we carry this from you're a child, and we a lot of, you know, I mean, any therapist I'm sure will say, right, you get down to their childhood and where there was hurt. What I say when I talk a lot, I say, you know, what Dear William is about is kind of my realization that family, they say, is at the root of our socialization. And I don't think there's any question that that's true. That's why therapists go back into that, because that also means that it can be the root of our joy, family, and the root of our pain. And so that's so much of what I tried to delve into in Dear William. I've read a lot of books of mental health and addiction where it's just that person's perspective, and that's the way it has to be. And this is just my memoir, my perspective. But what I tried to do is present it as the reality, which this is a family thing here. It is a family disease. Mental health is rooted in family. And so I tried to present with the blessing of my family who allowed me to include them in this story. I tried to just present kind of a family truth of here's how we got broken and here's how we made it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think number one, once again, I'll say this again, congratulations, and how impressed I am with Kent and your children for allowing you to be so raw and so honest on this. You know, one of the things, of course, you were adopted, and you do tell the story of how you find your family, and which is wonderful because there's so many great, almost near misses, connections, and so forth in it. But when you start finding out that your half siblings, you know, they have a taste for alcohol too.
No.
Understanding how strong DNA is. And it kind of reminded me of the book Children's of Alcoholics. I can't remember exactly the title.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So many kids that, you know, so and you didn't have that with your parents being alcoholics, but say you are a child of an alcoholic, suddenly, and you want to do everything you can to make your family right and make your situation right, then suddenly you become an alcoholic because you've got this pain from that trauma that you had earlier. And it's what reminds me a little bit on that, it was when you're sitting there playing football with your kids and you're trying to spend all the time with your kids because you want to be everything that you're
the best dad.
Yeah, you want to be the best dad in the world. And one very powerful thing I heard you say was that when William passed, you realized that you're not going to give your kids as much, and you're going to make them work a little bit harder for what they have. And I mean, I read that passage aloud to my wife, and if my kids are watching this, we're cracking down. But you're right. I think you don't do your children a favor if you give them everything.
I'm so glad you brought up that point. I'm often asked by parents of students and whatnot, and I'm not saying, cut them off to the quick, but particularly if they're struggling or they're in some areas, look, we humans are at our best in self-sufficiency, right? If we're dealing with depression, we'd like to avoid going out in the world. But when the need for sufficiency forces us into the world, we always feel better with that engagement, right? So in substance, it's the same thing. When we have means to fall back on that dependent crutch and it's just there, we can. And so with William, our oldest, he was so bright and such a good athlete, and we did want him to have every advantage, so we're giving. Europe for the summer in Spain, we have every single advantage. And what we realized is when he died, we did make an abrupt about face with our two younger children one was in college and one was, both had just embarked on college, where one was a freshman and one was, a sophomore, late sophomore. And what we did was sat them down and said, you know what? We just got to be honest with you. We don't see us as dollars. What we're going to do is actually really invest in loving you more and try to pay less attention to all the things we want for you, that we think we want for you. And we're going to love you more deeply and love you more, but we're just going to give you less. And material. And that means you're going to have to figure out how to help pay or totally pay for your college. You're going to have to pay for your gas. So there were some things like we paid car insurance. We paid, Marshall, I cannot tell you the profound impact, and it annoyed them a little bit just because William messed his up, they will tell you today it changed everything. My son Hudson, who nearly died and is now 9 years sober, and he allows me to tell that. Well, it's in the book. So he within 2 years of him nearly being found nearly dead at a fraternity house, within 2 years, he had figured out how to go get money to buy a starter home and get renters to pay for it. And I didn't sign the note.
Wow.
And then he sells that and flips it and then buys another house. And he was selling like popsicles on the side and having to pay his way through college. I mean, he is a hustler at every degree. And guess what? He found himself and he found sobriety, and it really worked.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You probably remember from the time of the Clarion Ledger, Keith Warren that worked with. Yeah, Keith and I both, I had melanoma in 2001. And by the way, congratulations for being a cancer survivor yourself.
Thank you. And you as well. I remember the melanoma story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the melanoma happened. Keith lost his dad to it. I was very fortunate. I'm still here 20 years later.
Wow.
But we started the Run from the Sun race with the help of Bill Hunsberger, who was publisher at the time. And we carried it on for 10 years. But what was so nice about it was that we were able to help other people that were walking in our journey. And I didn't think anything of it. Keith wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. It was great. And my doctor came and screened people, and we caught people that had melanoma and everything else. What I didn't realize, though, at the time was that was probably the best therapy and possibly in the world. And with the William Magee Center and with what you're doing now, I can't even imagine the pain that you and Ken have gone through. I just can't even fathom it, and I pray I don't. And but that said, I know that knowing that you're able, because I mean, there is an issue on every college campus. Ole Miss definitely has an issue with drugs and alcohol, and knowing that you might help one parent not have to suffer the fate that you and Ken had to go through. The pain.
Well, we have, and I'll tell you a little about that.
Sure.
You make a great point, and we've literally saved lives. And what I always remind people about the college campus is, so I spent a lot of my years thinking, this college has a problem, and this problem has a college, and this university has a problem. And what's interesting, first of all, beyond a shadow of a doubt, some have more of a percentage just for students they collect in different, some small Christian college is going to have statistically less students probably using substances than a large flagship university, right?
Yeah.
But I used to think a lot in terms of, the University of Georgia, they really have a problem. And I thought that way. Well, it's so interesting. Once I actually delved into this and started working with students, I've seen research to bear this out now, but at the time it was just anecdotal. And I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, well, let's see. I took my first drink at 14. Yeah. I was in middle school. I read my son William's journal after he died, and he took his first drink in 7th grade at a spend the night party at Oxford Middle School.
Wow.
My son Hudson began maybe alcohol or marijuana use in middle school in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My daughter, Mary Hallie, began her eating disorder in high school. And every student that I ever talked to, well, I would say every, that's a generalization, 90+%, when they start talking honest to me, when did this begin? High school, middle school, junior high, however they phrase it. Like almost nobody starts their problem in college. And so, there's two things. Number one, what we realized is that on a college campus, because of that fact, people are essentially arriving with illnesses that they don't even know they have.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is help educate them and provide support. And on college campuses initially, say in the 50s and 60s, having built in a bigger infirmary was a big deal of the physical health that we know. Yeah. And I think we've just arrived at the point to where, because they do arrive on college campuses with these issues, we have to provide holistic support and education. And I'm proud that some weeks I've helped 3 or 4 get to treatment, and we've helped, students in real crisis on a suicide ledge and more. But this is a long answer, but I want to say something really important that you will appreciate, and anybody that's watching from Mississippi will really appreciate. At the time that the College Board, so the William Magee Center at Ole Miss opened in 2019, and we still got a lot of work to do to get better, but some great Mississippi families like the Triplets and others that care about this cause, have really helped us make a difference. But the College Board at the same time created the ability to build the university's next standalone national institute. Mm-hmm. And so think of like an umbrella, and the Magee Center, which serves Ole Miss students, is under that umbrella. And there will be other centers, a research center, one for perhaps eating disorders. And so the Magee Institute is kind of a classic play in higher ed, will allow us to go work in communities beyond just the university. Okay. So we now have an interim executive director in place, Dr. Megan Rosenthal. She'd been head of the faculty senate at Ole Miss in the past year. She is a researcher, just an all-star. And so we're building something that I think, we need to take a look at. Do we need a new schools program? Because I don't even know that we have one. Yeah. Do we need really more education and support back to middle school and high school, which is why I gave that long answer, because I think we do, because it happens long before they get here to a campus.
Well, and then on top of that, David, here we're coming out of this pandemic, and I'm not even sure we're coming out of it totally. We can get another variant next week and end up with the same kind of issues, but these kids literally have dealt with trauma, and yes. We all have. To be honest with you, yes. That's why we're screaming at each other on Facebook every day. But I know it's
people where I told somebody the other day, I said, like, you do understand that all this disagreement and hatred, they're all really upset about the same thing. They just don't know it.
Right.
Life has gotten hard, and life has left a lot of people behind, and they're really frustrated.
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, it all goes back to, those same scripts that, we were using from kids. And then suddenly when the newspaper business collapses, or, suddenly you're on Adderall and you're drinking and
Yes.
your career's crumbling, or whatever the case may be, suddenly this pandemic comes along and whatever we were using to get by with didn't work anymore. Yeah, you tend to scream at each other. But I'm so glad to hear that with what you're doing with the colleges. That was something that really jumped out at me when, like, we were on the college tours with my sons. We would go to
Yes.
universities, and usually one of the first things that came up was, we have really good mental health services. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because, and I remember, we got in the 80s, it was kind of like, yeah, rub a little dirt on it if you had an issue. That was about the only kind of help you could get. Or you go to the infirmary.
There wasn't
they give you
any, no.
and penicillin. That was about
Right.
So it's only deal. So, I mean, I truly applaud what you've done. And like I said, you turned a really horrible situation into a blessing for a lot of families. How does the student get to you? How do you get?
Yeah. So, well, the great news is that because the university named the William Magee Center after our late son, though I don't work in there. I work at the university, but it's like a project for me. I help get resources and some marketing ideas and things like that. So I do that, but I don't actually work in there. However, because my late son's name is on it, and because I do things like this, a lot of parents and students reach me because maybe they feel like I'm approachable. So while I'm not necessarily the contact to get into the Magee Center, I get a lot of it. And like, I've got a lunch with a student on Wednesday who actually came to my book signing at Square Books. And he's like, he starts talking to me and he's pretending like he's just excited for my book. And I say, well, how are you?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm a talker. So I've really had to learn that act of, it's okay to be a talker, but I need to give one genuine connection to somebody to let them know I'm here for you. And so he's like, the book's so exciting, and like, he's great and he's just supporting me. But I go, how are you? And he's choke, tears. Well, and so they find me a lot, and then I help them get into the pipeline because they can they trust me. And the other way is, the old trusted Google. And so Magee is important to spell right, because some people will spell it MCGEE, but the Magee Center, MAGEE, you can find it on the Ole Miss website, olemiss.edu, magee.olemiss.edu, and just the old Google. And there's great resources and people ready to just help. And they do assessment. A lot of times we'll have students like, I don't want to leave school. I just need some help to start looking at it. So we'll either make referrals or, get them in the right counseling channel. And then we have collegiate recovery for students that have come through treatment that just need some support to stay sober. And let me say this, though. I have to say this before we're out of time. And this is slightly flipping gears, but you and I are just really getting to know each other. But I like what you're about. And I have thought this on you before, and I just don't want to let this day go where I don't say this. You have so much to offer in the self-help realm. Like, you do a lot of that. Have you ever thought about, like, I'm just getting this on record. So if this becomes a national bestseller, then anybody can go, that David Magee, he's so smart. What if you I'm just picturing your cartooning of a book of mental health type, ironies and oddities and the things we all think, and you're writing these blocks that kind of go with each. Marshall, I'm thinking Marshall Ramsey has an absolute bestseller on that, and I'm going to help take it to the world when you're ever ready to do that.
It's funny. I have thought about it because I've had some personal stuff over the last few years, and it would be, everything from a graphic novel about your mind being a garden and hoeing it.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, I'm serious. I'm so serious. You've had that whole cancer journey. You're a parent. You're a spouse. you're on this life journey, and you are also open and engaging about it. And like you are a world-class cartoonist. That's kind of why I was saying that on John Archibald.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've watched him do, is like, where is the reinvention along the way of that it becomes part of that story. I would look, I don't want to beat it on that but I would just like to give whatever encouragement I can give. I think that would just be, can't put it down, like on everybody's coffee table and bedside.
You know, there was a scene when you were out in California or Arizona or wherever it was with your girlfriend at the time.
Yeah, that was Arizona.
And the father asked you how to get back, and you're giving advice, and here your whole world is crumbling around. And so there for a long time, I always felt that way. I was like, well, I don't know if I can give advice because I got a lot of stuff I got to deal with now. On that
well, I think that if you're writing and drawing about it, even from that humble perspective,
yeah,
that you're not assuming you belong, but you're sharing the storytelling. Because the great thing about cartooning, right, which is how you've had just some that have just gone absolutely viral over the years, you say what everybody's thinking with that ironic twist, and they're like, yeah, well, like in what we face in health and mental health and our fears, it even as just parents and middle-aged humans, you know, it would tap into everything that we're all wanting to put our finger on. Like the cancer journey for me was fascinating. It happened quick, but you know, that was a whole other thing that I find people want to talk to me about. But I was so busy at the time, after a son nearly died and our daughter eating disorder and divorce and getting remarried and our other son dying and me getting back on my feet and starting my career over. I was so busy in all that when blood is dripping out of my nipple, I'm just trying to make it stop.
And you had breast cancer, which most men don't think, oh, I might have breast cancer.
Yeah, that was a bizarre experience. And my shirts don't fit right because I had all of that cut out. But, you know, it was just a thing. It's in my past.
You're here. You got the knife.
I'm here. That's right. And very thankful to be here, in fact. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Look, you got to go in a second. I know that. Dear William is an amazing book. It is. So, like I said, it crushed my heart and expanded it all at the same time, which is, it takes a lot to do that. And I applaud you for your honesty in the fact that, because like what you're talking about, what I could possibly do on the mental health side, you will help a lot of parents with this, open their eyes to their own situation, but to their children's as well. Is there any last thought about the book that you want to get out there before we go? And obviously in a website too, throw that out.
Yeah. Well, you can find more about the book at daviddmagee.com. Magee is the key to spell it right, daviddmagee.com. And you can find out about the book there. You know, one thing I'll say about the book, Marshall, is I'm unapologetic about asking people to celebrate this book and tell others about it and buy copies and give it for Christmas and give it. And here's why. I'm not taking any money home from this one. It's all going to the cause. It was important for me. This book was going to be my memoir, but it's not about me. It's about everybody it can reach and help. And because I've set it up this way, it allows me to unapologetically push the book, because I'm not personally benefiting beyond the fact that it can maybe help someone else. And so what I say is, buy lots of copies of Dear William and give them to your friends, and we'll everybody that you and we can help will be appreciative.
I've already recommended it to 10 people, and I'll probably recommend it to twice that many more. So
I thank you so very much. And I do look forward. I love a conversation like this. I look forward to more relationship and friendship with you around this better humanity cause, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
You were there. So we can do some things together on that. And I do look forward to reading your book one day.
Yeah, next time I'm up in Oxford, I want to make sure we go have lunch and talk some more. And tell Kent, like I said, she's a rock star, and she has my admiration. I'm going to see
her in like 2 minutes, and it's the first thing I'm going to tell her. Marshall Ramsey said, "You're a rock star," and she will smile.
Well, I understand that because I'm married to one too, so I know how.
I understand that for sure. Well, thank you so much, my friend.
God bless. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.